Okay, if you're hearing this, it means we're on. This is Jay Brown Yoga Talks podcast. My name is Jay Brown. Thank you for being here. If you're new, welcome. And everyone else, what's going on? I know things have been a little crazy over the last few weeks. I stepped on a political landmine, and there's still a lot to be unpacked, and I'm still working to see what I can do to make things better. But it's really got me thinking about our politics in general and how dysfunctional they really are. I stumbled into this weird looking glass of how much our politics divides us and conquers us. And I just think that it was a distraction from what I don't want to face, which is the continued uncertainty and strain of this fucking pandemic. I don't know about anybody else. I think what happened is I have an old friend of mine who I haven't seen in many, many years, and we've been in touch. We used to play music together in college, and he texted me, and he said that in like a couple of weeks, he was actually going to be driving through Pennsylvania, and maybe he would stop by. And I was like immediately excited to see this old friend of mine, and then immediately there's just a swarm of questions, right? Oh, is it okay for him to come over? Do we stay outside? Do we wear masks? It's the whole, and just realizing nobody's stopped over for well over a year. Nobody's come over. The dawning reality of how long this has been. And I still really don't know when it feels like it's going to be okay to do I start booking events again? I don't really know. And that really is where I think today's conversation and next week's conversation are kind of going, which is where are we and what's going on, and what is the situation for us as yoga teachers right now? What does it look like in different places, and what are different people doing, and is there opportunities for people to come together in new ways? So my guest today is Kelly Kamm. And this happened a little while back because of a listener recommendation. And whoever that listener was really did have a good sense of me, because Kelly and I had a lot in common. You'll hear. We do a little reminiscing of the New York scene. And then we get into some philosophy stuff. And then we get to where we are now. And it is very reaffirming to talk with those of you out there, fellow teachers who are dealing with the same stuff. And I enjoyed having this opportunity to meet and connect with Kelly, and I'm glad to be sharing it with you today. Before we get to that, let me take a moment to reach out to anybody listening to this who currently owns or manages a studio, or maybe you're going to open something up. If you aren't currently happy with your studio management software, or the way you're administrating your classes, I think maybe this would be a good time to check out today's sponsor, Karmasoft. Longtime listeners heard me talk about Karmasoft for years. It is the studio management software that I used when I had a yoga center, and I know the owner, Rudy Senegal. He has been on the show before. You can go back and listen to it. He, I think, runs the company in a different way from other studio management softwares, and you need that right now. You need a company that's going to work with you. He recently came up with a whole range of different stuff to help people deal with online classes and in-person classes. So maybe now is a time to do a little bit of reevaluation, and maybe you would do yourself a favor to go check out Karmasoft. Go to karmasoftonline.com. And, if you want to connect with me in other ways besides listening to this show, if you want to read my blog, if you want to check out my live stream classes or my online workshop or the teacher's call that I'm always talking about, or you maybe just want to email me, if you want to find any of my stuff, go to jbrownyoga.com. All right, y'all. I think that's it. I'm going to be honest with you. I did a lot of talking this week. A lot of off-air talking, working through stuff, and I'm sort of talked out. There's like a whole bunch of stuff going on, but I can't get into any of it right now. I'm just going to have to leave it till later. I will touch base with you on the other side, but yeah, it would be best for us to just get to the talk. So let's do that. Okay? Let's listen to this conversation that I had with Kelly Kamm. Hello?
Hi.
Hi, Kelly.
Hello. Oh, I'm so happy this worked.
Yes, we're here.
Yeah, first time doing Zoom audio, so that's good. It worked.
There you go. There you go. Here we are. Good to meet you.
Yeah, same.
We haven't met, but someone who listens to this show, whose name I didn't write down, unfortunately. I'm sorry, whoever you are. Shout out to you.
I think it's Kim.
Oh, you might know the person. Good.
Yeah, she told me. I'm so grateful.
Well, she emailed me and she said, I listened to the show. I think you should talk to Kelly. I think you guys would have a great conversation.
Oh, that's so great.
And then I went to your website, and like somewhere right near the top, it said, always on the hunt for some deep connection with the invisible forces of magic and spirit. Mm-hmm. And I said, yup, count me in on that.
Yeah, I think you and I are a lot alike, actually. I think as we talk to each other, we'll find that we kind of circled around a lot of the same things and people and places on the hunt for the same thing.
Yeah, we had a few similar bio points I saw as well. But first, just how is your day going before we get all deep? We just met each other. So how's your day been going?
Right. Pretty good today. I'm on the couch surrounded by a pile of cats. So, it doesn't get much better than that.
All right.
Yeah. It's raining here in New York. I'm in upstate New York.
Okay. I almost moved to Saugerties at one point.
Yeah, not too far. I'm about an hour from the city, so not that far as Saugerties is, but close enough that I could get there when I want to, but far enough away that it feels like a world away.
So maybe it's raining where you are right now too.
It is.
See, yeah. We're in the same storm here.
Yeah.
And it's funny. I'm feeling very grateful for this moment with you, Kelly, because my day up until now was a little bit hectic. Mm-hmm. And I was running around a little. I have this new space. I let go of this studio that I was renting. That was like a 25, 30-minute drive away. I've had it for a few years, but it's a long story. But I let go of that space and I found a space. It's really close, right around the corner from my house.
Oh, that's so good.
So I can just walk there. It's way better. And I've been there for just a few weeks now. And today, and this podcast was supposed to be the first time I was going to record a podcast there. Mm-hmm. And I've been there at this time 2 weeks prior, and it's been perfectly quiet and like ideal for recording. And then today, when I went to get ready to record with you, there was literally a jackhammer right outside. And they were working on like a water main or something. And I was like, oh no. So I like ran home and came into my attic so it wouldn't be I wouldn't have a jackhammer in my ear while I was trying to talk to you.
It's always like that. Like it could be so quiet on my block until the moment I have to teach a yin yoga class. And then all of a sudden there's like street cleaners and big trucks.
Yeah. And I taught in New York City for a lot of years. So you got to get used to a certain amount of just always there being noise. But the jackhammer right outside the window was actually going to be a problem. So
Yeah.
I'm kind of glad I made it here kind of just in time. And now I'm actually feeling okay, like take a breath and settle in with you. So I just needed to do that to get myself oriented into
Get it out. Good. Deep exhale. Here we are.
Yeah. Well, I guess the other thing that someone said to me about you was that you were like a real Bhagavad Gita person. And is that something I noticed? It said that you studied Eastern philosophy and politics, like in college. Were you already into yoga when you started studying Eastern philosophy, or did you start studying Eastern philosophy and yoga became a thing for you after that?
Yeah, after I started, I went to high school in Japan. And my MO was always like, there's more. There's got to be more. Like, I want to feel the magic. I want to know everything there is to know about everything. And so I went to high school in lots of places around the world and ended up staying in Japan for a year. And so when I came back, I just figured, okay, that'll be a good avenue to go. And so I studied East Asian Affairs at George Washington University at the School of International Affairs there. And right around the same time was when I started yoga. So that was, I'm 42, 43, 42, I think now. So that was almost 25 years ago. So both about the same time. And, did the college thing and was really on track to be a high achiever, but something was missing. I needed art. I needed creativity. I needed freedom. I needed magic. And I probably, could have found it somewhere in that world, but I left school 2 days before graduation. You can imagine how happy my parents were about that.
What? Like you didn't actually finish?
I did. I actually, because of a great therapist a couple of years ago who made me get in touch with the school and find out if I actually finished. I did better than I thought. I finished. I was like Dean's List. Everything was great. I just didn't go to graduation because I had a real, screw the man kind of mentality. Like, I'm not going to be behind a desk. I can't do that. That's not my life.
Okay. Well, listen, Kelly, our convergence just got a little weird because like I had the exact same thing happen. Like I didn't, there was 2 different graduations I was supposed to go to. One of them I didn't go to. And then one of them, my dad came into town and he insisted that we were going to go. I was so mad. I actually walked out in the middle of it.
Oh my God.
It was like somebody was giving a speech and they were like from AT&T or some shit. And I was like, what the fuck is this? I was like, it was literally what you said. The man, fuck the man. And like, I just thought the whole world was like so corrupt and unjust. Yeah. And I was like, this is just, and I was not in a good place with it at that time. You know what I mean? I was not at all.
Same. I was like mad. I just kind of always angry and just, wanted more. My graduation, Placido Domingo sang. My mom was so upset that we didn't go. It was on the ellipse in front of the White House. It was a big deal, and I feel really bad about it. I'm sure my mom will listen to this later. So Mom, I'm really sorry about that.
Mom, I'm sorry for cussing. Oh no, I've just been dropping F-bombs and your mom's going to listen to this? Sorry, Mom.
No, we're all good now. Good now. But I left and I went to hike the Appalachian Trail. It's like, that's where it's going to be. That's where the magic is. That's where God is. And I didn't find it. I brought my sort of miserable self out into the woods and I had a lot of beautiful moments out there for sure, but I didn't find God like I wanted to. So I came back.
Wow. See, it's interesting because I had the same impulse. I was like, our societal structures are clearly like not serving my idea of humanity and life. Where do I find the magic? Just like you, I was like, I wanted, that which sort of transcends those confines.
Yeah.
And I didn't go on the Appalachian Trail, but I did do like a 3-month like walkabout to India.
Wow.
in 1998. I just like saved up a bunch of money.
1998. I wonder. Oh, I think I maybe it was 99. I did a similar thing. I did the same exact thing. I saved up all my money and I went to India and Nepal, and I was like, God's going to be here. Come on.
I was looking for. I wasn't thinking of God. I was like, maybe I'll find a guru.
Yeah.
Like I need like spiritual guidance. Will somebody give me some spiritual guidance? And I did meet a teacher there that was super helpful to me. But he wasn't like a guru in the way that I thought, you know?
Yeah. That's so funny. I did the same thing. I went all around the world. I just flew from country to country looking for it. Teacher, magic, God. You know that story? There's an old fable, I guess. It's what you'd call it, about the guy who goes to a temple. He tries to find enlightenment. Then he sits down for a while. He's trying to meditate. And he finally gives up. And he says, this place smells like crap. And he grabs his stuff and he goes higher up the mountain to another temple. And he thinks, oh, this one's going to be better. Crisper air. This is the spot. And he tries to meditate. And 2 minutes later, he throws his hands up and he yells, this place smells like crap too. So he goes all the way up to the top of the mountain where the most beautiful monastery is, like up in the clouds. And he sits down next to the sweet looking monk, begins his practice. And a minute later, he yells out, not this place too. Every temple smells like crap. And the sweet little monk beside him says very gently, oh, maybe it's the bag of shit that you carried up here with you. And that was totally me. It's like, you take yourself with you everywhere you go. So it doesn't matter if you're in India or Tahiti or small town upstate New York. You know, the inner world is the same.
That's right. And I think that at some point for me, yoga became kind of the way that I was going to figure something out, like, or not, like it felt like the appropriate avenue for me. Because I had let go of like the religion that my family had. Like I didn't identify with Judaism. And I wanted to touch base with like something sacred. And yoga seemed to provide an outlet for me to explore that in a way that I get to steer or something. That's what it felt like.
Yeah, I had the same experience. Really felt like finally I was like dealing with my inner world that I had just gone all over the outer world to try to run away from. And yoga put me right in my body.
Okay, so where did you land?
So I landed where I am now in upstate New York, which is where my family is. And I came here because I had a baby and just needed help. Didn't really know what to do with a small child. And my mom's here and my sister's here, my dad's here. So I landed here and I opened up a little yoga studio in this tiny little town. And there was no really yoga around. There were a couple places. There's Ananda Ashram. I don't know if you're familiar with Ananda Ashram. Yeah. So that's about 25 minutes from me. But other than that, there wasn't really any yoga.
But where did you establish your teaching before you opened a center?
Nowhere.
So had you done any kind of...
I'd never taught anywhere. I did a training and opened the studio.
Where did you do this training?
And Laughing Lotus.
Oh, in the city, Laughing Lotus.
Yeah. So I landed in New York, and I think you and I kind of grew up in the same New York yoga scene.
What year did you do Laughing Lotus teacher training?
Oh, I don't remember.
Because we might have crossed paths.
I'm sure. This was like 15 years ago, 15 years ago. In New York, and like did the whole, I went through all the culty places, what Matthew Remski calls them, high demand organizations.
Do you think of Laughing Lotus as a high demand organization?
Oh yeah. Now that I'm out of it completely.
And Jiva too.
Jiva Mukti, all of them. Dharma Mitra's noon masterclass, AKA the Bendy Circus.
You certainly had to meet a certain criteria in order for it to be cool for you to be in there, right?
Yeah.
And there was established, there definitely, I see what you're saying, but that was very common. That was like the way it was.
That was what we did, right? Like in Elena Brower, got really into Anusara for a minute, like went kind of through all of it, cycled through the whole, almost got lost in the Krishna Bhakti thing. You know, I still have a big Krishna tattoo on my arm that my girlfriend and I laugh about all the time. You know, but really went through the whole thing. And like, that's what we did back then, right? We just lived and breathed yoga. It was really intense.
Yeah, there was all kinds of stuff going on, of course, but it did have, I don't know, there was a lot of possibility there, and I certainly was able to discover and learn a lot. Yeah. You definitely had to discern, and I didn't get into any of those scenes too much. I was a little bit of an outlier most of the time.
Oh, good for you.
I mean, I certainly was in a few. I hung out with Allison for a long time, but did you ever study with Allison West at all?
Oh, I love Allison West. Yeah.
Say, I probably spent more time with Allison than any other teacher in New York.
And Cindy Lee. Cindy Lee is the one I consider like my heart teacher. She's the one that I just still to this day adore more than anything.
Okay, so you had that experience, and then you decided to like bail town and head upstate, and you just opened up shop. What year was that? Well, do you remember what year that was?
I'm so bad at years. I know.
I'm just trying to orient myself. Like,
yeah, I opened the studio. Let me say, okay, so I sold it 6 years ago, and I had it for 10 years. So, what would that be? 2000.
6 years ago would be
10,
okay. So that was early. I didn't open until 2007, but I had it for 10 years too. Was it just 2 leases or 1 lease?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it was a couple. And then it just, that drama of letting go of the studio. You've been there. It's a lot. But yeah, and I lived here the whole time. I never lived in the city. I just went to the city to do all my classes and training and, went through that whole thing, did all the yoga. I was talking to Kira Sloan. Do you know Kira Sloan?
I think we've met her. I know of her.
Hi. Yeah. So we were talking the other day about that time in New York, and it was like, all we did was yoga. And she was saying that now people, they do their yoga and ... whatever other things they're into. But it seemed like back then we just did yoga. There wasn't an end.
Well, I will say I just did yoga back then, like you, the same. But now in my older years, I do some squats with some loaded squats now and again because it makes my spine feel good.
I mostly run and lift weights now. I do yoga twice a week.
See? So I don't rule it out. But it wasn't like yoga and classes, if that's what you mean. Like,
no, I mean like, people are into like hiking or running or weightlifting, whatever, biomechanics. But back then it was like, no, it was just yoga.
Because it definitely was still, at least when I started, it felt like I say this all the time, but it was like a counterculture thing. Yeah. Like you said, we didn't want to have office jobs. We were like, we got to the graduation. You're like, no fucking way. I'm not going to the White House for my grad. I wanted, you wanted to feel the spirit, the magic and the spirit, as you wrote, the forces of magic and spirit, because there are forces of magic and spirit in life. So, okay. So you have your center for 10 years. How long was it good for before it maybe took a downturn? I'm projecting on you, but how?
Yeah, no, that's exactly what happened. So it was a good solid, 6 or 7 years of just high and happy, like going to the city and taking great classes. And afterwards asking the teacher, come visit my little tiny space in the middle of nowhere. And they would come. So I'd have Catherine Budig would come spend the weekend, and, Cindy Lee was here all the time, and we sold out every workshop, and it was really great. And then, I had pretty much the first teacher training program around here. And it's a real small town. We don't even have a grocery store. It's that small. So, I started training a lot of teachers, as we do, to stay in business. And then they became teachers, and they opened studios, and more people moved into the area. And we just didn't have the amount of people to fill the spaces in a yoga class in studios that were popping up all over. And so I was teaching workshops all over. I taught in Canada quite a bit. And I'd go to Canada, and make all this money and have to come back and pour it into this yoga studio that was just bleeding money. And it was just exhausting. And I actually tried to I was going to open a second location, and just decided to do that. And the first one just tanked. And any dime I had to put every single penny into just keeping the doors open on the first one. So that's when I was like, I just can't do this. I'm exhausted.
See, that's such a common tale. Like you have that first good 7 years, 6-7 years, and then it starts to turn and it's hard to see it, one, and then like be honest with yourself about that, and then even know what to do, because there's sometimes things you can do about it, but sometimes it was just like the trajectory, like you said, if a bunch of centers open up and there was a saturation, and sometimes it's just the rent goes up every year and you can't keep pace.
Yeah.
And so at some point, the teacher trainings was the way that you were able to like make up a bunch of difference, as long as those numbers were good. But if you had dips in those numbers, then you were kind of screwed.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then
I think my story is very common.
Yeah, right. And then at some point, but there's that moment. See, this is the one interesting moment that you described, where the idea is that you could open another location and that might be a solution.
Mm-hmm.
And that's based on this idea of growing, growth.
Yeah.
And that, I think, has proven to be the disastrous idea or like way of going when it comes to yoga centers. That idea of let me open another location. There's very few people who've made that work. There's like a couple of outliers who have a couple of locations and actually are still going okay. But most of the time, like an independent player, it's not a good idea.
Right. I think my girlfriend's had a studio for, I don't know, between 15 and 20 years now, a little further upstate than me. And she's just quiet and does her thing, and her rent is really low. Yep. And it works. It works so well. And she's made it through the pandemic. And it's just, really taught me a lot. Like, you don't need a big space. You don't need multiple places. You just need a devoted community that you're there for. You're reliable. It's small.
Yeah. I told you at the very beginning when we got on together that I let go of this other space, which was like a 600 square foot artist loft. Mm-hmm. It was beautiful. It was like white walls, like diagonal old wood floors, it was beautiful. It wasn't like a storefront like I had in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
It had like a bathroom down the hall that was a little bit scuzzy, but it was still like a nice studio that I could have like 10, 12 people in.
Yeah.
But now it doesn't make sense anymore, actually. Like, because it wasn't like in order to get that space, I had to be in a neighborhood that wasn't like a foot traffic, upscaler neighborhood, Yeah. So I was never really able to generate a lot of local buy-in. And I had people who would drive and come, but not that many. And after the pandemic, I made it through most of it. And then now I just moved, I moved into, it's like a space share with a photographer. So she was only using this space for like a couple days a week. And
that's so smart. I think.
Yeah. So she let me take the other. Yeah. And it's like,
working together.
It's like 1/3 the amount of money I was spending. And it's right around the corner. And I have to reset up my shit every time, which is a little bit of a drag, but it's not that much of a drag. And it's certainly worth all the money I'm spending. I'm not spending,
And to not drive, like I can't imagine. I was just driving all over the place to teach. I was driving hours and hours to go teach workshops. Now I just can't imagine doing that. Really, the pandemic has changed that a lot. Yeah. I want to be in the car driving all over.
No, but I like what you said about it doesn't have to be a big space. And if the overhead's low enough, then you don't have this pressure on you to get people in.
Yeah. And then you're putting that pressure on your students too, without realizing it. When you've got the rent pressure, then that stress is being translated through, it's in the space.
And maybe I'll ask you about this because you have this experience of being a teacher and then as owner and then just a teacher and having your own space. And I think that right now with the pandemic, there's a situation where teachers, they've been teaching classes out of their living rooms. Mm-hmm. And some of them have like their own classes that they've started as well as classes that they teach at centers.
Yeah.
And then now some of the centers are maybe starting to have in-person classes again.
Right.
And it's really like a new relationship. Like if you're getting paid whatever, $25, $30 a class, but that class is getting recorded and becomes part of the center's digital library, and they're going to make money off of it in perpetuity, off of subscriptions.
Yeah, there's a lot of
not be a
questions.
Good, not be like a fair situation anymore.
Yeah.
Like in a digital world, teachers have to have their own lists, and there has to be a more collaborative relationship. That's what I think.
I think so too. It's really, when I first started teaching on Zoom, my boss, I guess you call her, at Ananda Ashram, we talked about it a lot. She's like, what do we do now that every teacher is essentially their own studio? Does it make studios obsolete? And I found that actually my classes that I try to run just on my own don't do so well. But the ones I run through a studio, I am grateful for, because people still come through the studios.
Hey,
so there has to be a relationship there.
I think so. If there's a community, and that's a community that you enjoy, and they're treating the teachers well, then of course it's a great situation to have a relationship and be at a center. But I will say this, and this firsthand, that if you don't establish your own bit of platform, you are really at the whim of those centers. And if they're least bad, or they decide to close, the teachers are a little bit left holding the bag as much, even when it's a cool center owner does their best.
Yeah.
And so in a way, I also worry about that in terms of like sustainability.
Yeah. If you want stability and sustainability, don't be a yoga teacher.
Well, that's true. That's true. But
especially not a freelance one, just try to make it out there.
And we had a conversation in my teacher's class recently where we talked about how there's a difference. There's a difference between people who they're not really thinking of their teaching as like they're trying to make a living at it, or as a profession even so much, or even if it's a profession, they're not doing it. They don't need that income to support themselves necessarily. And for those people, I do think it's a little bit of a different situation than someone who is trying to make a go of it. And maybe that doesn't happen as much as it used to, where people made a living teaching yoga.
Yeah. I mean, I've certainly watched my living, how much money I've made has just gone down and down and down and down. But it's what I do. It's the only thing I've ever done. It's the only job I've ever really had. So I'm in it. I'm wholeheartedly in it. Going to see it through.
Yes.
See what happens.
You're a lifer, as I would call you.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So, all right. So
it has changed a lot, especially in the last handful of years, what it looks like now.
And I guess the thing is that there is that old model of running a center, which firsthand. And I just really wonder about it, that I don't know if it makes sense to go back to it. Maybe for some people, but not for everybody. Like on some level, even like the best of intentions, you end up having to kind of, like you said, in certain ways, put the squeeze on teachers and students or something.
Yeah. Yeah. Everybody's trying to make a living or get, just get what they're worth.
You're making money off of other people's classes. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah. And how do the teachers deserve to get paid, but the studio needs to keep its doors open. And, the students shouldn't have to pay out of the nose to take a yoga class. So it's a really hard situation for everybody, I think. It's not a great business model.
No, but like you said, I think in the old days, it used to be the center would bring people in. Like I had 100 new people come in the door every month just because of where I was. And then the teachers were the ones who developed the relationships and like really did the work of developing that community and having people come back. But at some point it shifted and the centers weren't bringing people in as much, maybe because there were so many centers. But I even remember at some point people were like hiring teachers based on like how many Instagram followers they had. Totally ridiculous. It's like Instagram followers don't even necessarily show up to your in-person classes, but
no, I know. It's really, wow. Yeah. Things really did change. I think.
Well, listen, we sound like boomers or something. We're freaking boomers over here.
I know. And I started to feel like my body broke too. I think that's what happened with me. Like eventually the high wore off. Like you just can't keep doing vinyasa yoga for 8 hours a day and nothing else. And my body broke.
Me too.
Like,
And that's why I went to like this gentle thing because I just needed to heal up. Yeah.
Every time I stood up after sitting, my hips would hurt so bad I would limp. My shoulder blades, they got glued in perpetual back and down position.
Yes.
I couldn't run a mile without knee pain because my hips were so weak from being pulled on for years. And I just saw my friends and teachers getting hip replacements, and things had to change, and that's when things really shifted in me. And I realized opening my hips and heart, because it seemed to be equated with some moral value, had actually broken me. Like I could drop back and grab my heels, but I couldn't walk.
I know. I had the same thing. I had the name like you could do the handstand press, but you're in massive pain. Who cares?
Yeah. So I started to really open my eyes then. When my body broke down, my eyes opened, and I just realized kind of how brainwashed I'd been. And
okay, well, let me ask you something. Let me ask you something about that. Okay, so is there something inherently not good about vinyasa yoga? Like, because I don't like to think of anything as inherently injurious. Like, I'm sure it could be done safely without injury. Yeah. Is it just that we did it too much and too recklessly? Or is there something about the style of practice that is just maybe not so good on a body?
I think we did it to the exclusion of all other things was the issue. For me, anyway, I can only speak for myself and what I saw around me, but anything, even the best movement, if it's done repetitively, is eventually going to be injurious. Right?
Especially movement that's based on like how far you can go every time, or you're lazy.
That's not really based in science either, like exercise science. That sort of ignored a lot of exercise science about what stretching really is, and what actually is healthy for our joints and our tissues. And so it's great. I think there's no black and whites. We really want things to be black or white, like this is good, this is bad, knee over the ankle, good, knee beyond the toes, bad. But it's not like that. Nope. All movement is good as long as you're prepared for it.
That's right. And I think that's true. I've certainly expanded my movement diet over the years, as they say. And I think also it's a little bit about mindset. And it's interesting because, and this is maybe a good transition into some philosophy stuff, because I think that for me, I got into yoga for like purely philosophical, spiritual reasons, like we discussed.
Yeah.
And at some point, the physicality definitely took over, and it became about me being able to do shit with my body that other people couldn't do, and to look really good while I was doing it. And at some point, my body totally broke too. And I ignored it for a lot of years too. You know what I mean? Like I had trained myself to think of pain as opening.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what we were told. Practice and all is coming. Yeah. And just keep going and you'll get there. And just, your hips hurt because you have so much emotional shit stored in them.
Right.
And,
Release
your heart's just not open yet. You just have to open your heart more. It's like, no, close it sometimes.
Exactly. And even that idea that if I open my chest, I open my heart, I'm not buying it anymore. But I think what happened for me...
There's a back of your heart too, and there's sides of your heart.
Yes. Thank you. I would say that what happened is when I switched, like you said, in my practice, I really decided it's no longer about strength and flexibility. Like it's about like down regulation and like easing my nervous system and really like honing attention, like my ability to direct attention. And then maybe lastly, like how I'm relating to myself. And can I relate in a way that's kind and has sthira sukha?
Yeah. For me, I realized like it was sort of faux heart opening. Like there wasn't a lot of tenderness to it. And also like being with discomfort and stillness, that was missing too. Discomfort, there was discomfort, certainly there was, but not the like willingness to sit in it and to think about it and to respect it and develop different relationship with it. That's why I love yin yoga so much.
Like we were moving around a lot, so it's easy to just kind of flow through, but to like be stiller and simpler, all other kind of stuff comes up, right?
Yeah. And I think a lot of yoga and even the Yoga Sutras is based on this idea of transcending, right? It's like transcending to get up and out. And I laugh when people talk about the Yoga Sutras like it's all about how we relate to our world and the yamas and niyamas. And it's like, well, kind of, but it's really about getting out of your body. Like it literally says that through the practice of shaucha, you develop disgust for your body.
Mm-hmm. Well, I've had extensive debates on the show about the sutras and Nirodha and whether, right, whether or not you're trying to transcend or whether there's more of like a tantric slant. But yeah, I hear you. I think there is certainly a consensus that the sutras is sort of dualistic in that way, and it is about achieving something that's almost a negation of being in a body.
Yeah. And some of that hard yoga that we did, like when you get into Shavasana and you're just wasted, like you just killed yourself for 2 hours and then you transcend it. You know, that feeling was kind of what I was going for. And then I realized like, no, I want to actually I want to feel this body. I don't want to get out of it.
If you are hearing this message, then you're listening to the free version of J. Brown Yoga Talks. To hear the rest of our conversation, please subscribe to Podcast Premium at jbrownyoga.com/premium.